This video is based on publicly available sports reporting, official NBA statistics, live game data, and verified news sources as of May 9th, 2026. Game stats and series standings reflect results through Game 3 of the Western Conference Semifinals. The series is ongoing. All player quotes are sourced from verified media reports. This content is for entertainment and informational purposes only. There's a 22-year-old from France who just did something that Shaquille O'Neal never did. Something that Hakeem Olajuwon only did once. Something that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did just once. And he did it in only the 7th playoff game of his entire career. 39 points, 15 rebounds, 5 blocks, shooting over 72% from the field. In a hostile arena, in a must-win road game, against a desperate team playing in front of their screaming home crowd. Victor Wembanyama just announced to the entire basketball world that this is his playoffs. And the San Antonio Spurs? They're taking control of this series in a way that nobody, absolutely nobody, saw coming. And if you want to be here for every single moment of this historic run, every game, every jaw-dropping performance, every twist in this series, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what we are witnessing in the 2026 NBA playoffs is something that only comes around once in a generation, and you do not want to miss a second of it. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, because to truly understand the magnitude of what Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs are doing right now, you have to understand the road that brought them here. The San Antonio Spurs finished the 2025-26 regular season with a staggering 62 wins and 20 losses. The second seed in the Western Conference, a franchise that not long ago was in full rebuild mode, bottoming out, tanking to get the number 1 pick, the pick that would eventually land them Victor Wembanyama. And now, just 3 years after drafting him, that franchise has transformed from a lottery team into one of the most dangerous teams in the entire NBA. Victor Wembanyama was always spoken about in legendary terms even before he played a single NBA game. The scouts, the analysts, the front office executives, they all said the same thing. This kid is different. This kid defies categorization. He's 7 feet 4 inches tall, but he moves like a guard. He can shoot three-pointers. He can dribble in transition. He can pass. And then defensively, the blocks, the altered shots, the presence, the wingspan that seems to stretch from sideline to sideline. This was supposed to be the future of basketball. But the future arrived faster than anyone expected. The Spurs entered the second round of the 2026 playoffs after dispatching the Portland Trail Blazers in 5 games in the first round. It wasn't always pretty. Portland stole Game 2 at home and gave San Antonio real problems. But Wembanyama and the supporting cast of De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, and Dylan Harper found their rhythm, closed out the series, and moved on. On the other side of the bracket, the Minnesota Timberwolves were coming off their own emotional war. They had just taken down the Denver Nuggets in a brutal series that went the distance. And in the process, their franchise star Anthony Edwards had gone down with a bone bruise and a hyperextended left knee in Game 4 of that series. The expectation going into the Western Conference semifinals was simple. Edwards would miss at least the first 2 games. Minnesota would be shorthanded. San Antonio would take advantage. That is not what happened. Anthony Edwards returned from the knee injury much sooner than expected and scored 18 points off the bench as the 6th-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves shocked the 2nd-seeded Spurs 104-102 in Game 1 right in San Antonio. But the scoreline, as dramatic as it was, barely scratches the surface of what made that night so extraordinary. Because Victor Wembanyama, even in a loss, put on a defensive display that will be talked about for decades. Olympics. Wembanyama shattered the NBA playoff record for blocks in a single game, finishing with 12, surpassing the previous mark of 10 that had been reached only 3 times in league history. Set by Mark Eaton in 1985, Hakeem Olajuwon in 1990, and Andrew Bynum in 2012. 12 blocks in 1 game. The basketball world genuinely could not process what they were watching. Wembanyama had matched the old record of 10 in just 3 quarters. He then broke it early in the 4th, swatting Anthony Edwards at the rim for his 11th rejection. It was the kind of moment where broadcasters go silent, where crowds forget whose side they're on, where basketball history is being written in real time. Alongside those 12 blocks, Wembanyama also recorded 11 points and 15 rebounds for a triple-double, becoming only the third player in postseason history to achieve a triple-double that included blocks. He also became the youngest player in Spurs history to record a playoff triple-double, doing so at just 22 years and 120 days old, surpassing Hall of Famer Tim Duncan, who achieved the feat in 2002 at 25 years and 360 days old. NBA rolling out. And yet, the Spurs lost. Wembanyama struggled profoundly on the offensive end in Game 1, connecting on just 29% of his attempts while missing all 8 three-pointers. Fox and Wembanyama combined to shoot 10 of 31 with 9 turnovers. After Wembanyama blocked Edwards at the rim in the fourth quarter, sparking something in the Timberwolves, Minnesota rattled off a 14-2 burst capped by a Mike Conley corner 3 to grab a 9-point lead. The Spurs clawed back. They got within 2 with 31 seconds left. Julian Champagne's last gasp three-pointer at the buzzer came up short, and Minnesota survived, rolling out +2. After the loss, Wembanyama was clear-eyed and composed. "We have to be better," he said. "It shows up on the stat sheet. We need to figure out before 48 hours what we can do better, and I've got no doubt that we will. I trust us." That kind of calm in the face of a heartbreaking defeat, that self-awareness from a 22-year-old, told you everything about who Victor Wembanyama is becoming, not just as a player, but as a leader. Game 2 came 2 days later, still in San Antonio. And this time, the Spurs delivered a message that was heard across the entire league. San Antonio demolished Minnesota 133-95 in a performance that was thorough, dominant, and relentless. The Wembanyama who had struggled offensively in Game 1 was nowhere to be found. In his place was the version of this player that kept scouts up at night. Active on both ends, efficient, physical, setting the tone from the very first possession. Stephon Castle led the Spurs with 21 points along with 4 rebounds and 4 assists in the blowout win. The series was tied 1-1 and heading to Minnesota. Now, Game 3 at Target Center in Minneapolis. The Timberwolves' home. One of the loudest buildings in basketball when the crowd is locked in. 18,978 fans packed into Target Center on the night of Friday, May 8th. Minnesota needed this one. After getting blown out in Game 2, after all the momentum they had built by stealing Game 1 on the road, the Timberwolves needed to come home and assert themselves in front of their fans.
Victor Wembanyama had different plans. What unfolded over the next 48 minutes was a performance so breathtaking, so statistically extraordinary, that it immediately entered the conversation for the greatest individual playoff performance by a young player in NBA history. Wembanyama became the 4th player in NBA history to record 35 or more points, 15 or more rebounds, and 5 or more blocks in a playoff game. He joined Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on that all-time list. And he's the only one of the 4 to do it while shooting over 70% from the floor, and it was just his 7th career playoff game. Let that sink in. Shaq, Hakeem, Kareem, and Wemby in just his 7th playoff game. The box score tells the story. 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 blocks in San Antonio's 115-108 victory. But the box score doesn't tell you about the moments that shifted the game. It doesn't tell you about Wembanyama rising up over Rudy Gobert in the fourth quarter. Over Rudy Gobert, a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, the man who literally mentored Wembanyama when he was still a high schooler in France, and draining a clutch three-pointer that all but sealed the game. It doesn't capture the way he dominated in the paint, the way he drew foul after foul, the way he finished at the rim against anyone who dared challenge him.
The third quarter ended with San Antonio leading 86-79, and it was a period where Wembanyama shined again, keeping the Spurs ahead every time Minnesota tried to build momentum. The Timberwolves had Anthony Edwards, 32 points, 14 rebounds, giving everything he had. The Timberwolves refused to give up and continued trying to stay close, but every time they threatened to come back, the Spurs immediately responded and played with far more composure. That composure, that unflappable, veteran-like calmness,
is becoming the defining identity of these San Antonio Spurs. They don't panic. They don't flinch. And it starts with their 22-year-old franchise cornerstone. Stephon Castle had a remarkable game of his own, tallying a double-double with 13 points and 12 assists. De'Aaron Fox added 17 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal. Devin Vassell chipped in 13 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. This is not a one-man team riding Wembanyama's coattails. This is a genuinely deep, talented, well-coached basketball team that happens to have the most unique player on earth as its centerpiece. The final score, Spurs 115, Timberwolves 108. San Antonio leads the series 2-1.
Now the series shifts back to Minneapolis for Game 4 on Sunday, and the Timberwolves are in a genuinely desperate position. Lose Game 4, and they're down 3-1, staring at potential elimination. Anthony Edwards is going to need to be better. Not just good, but great. Julius Randle and the rest of the Minnesota supporting cast need to find answers for Wembanyama that they have not yet found. The Timberwolves had home court advantage in Games 3 and 4 because San Antonio was the 2 seed. But being the 2 seed means the Spurs only need to win one of the 2 home games to retain series control. Wembanyama is a generational talent who anchors both ends of the floor in a way no other player in basketball can replicate. His combination of rim protection, shot blocking range, and offensive versatility makes him the most impactful individual in this series. The entire basketball world is beginning to truly understand what that means. Not in theory, not in projection, but in the living, breathing, undeniable reality of what they're watching in these playoffs. There is a conversation beginning among the sport's greatest analysts. A conversation that was perhaps premature just months ago, but now feels not just reasonable, but necessary. Is Victor Wembanyama already the best player in the world? The performances across this playoff run, the Game 1 record-breaking defensive masterpiece, the Game 2 bounce back, the Game 3 historic offensive explosion, paint a picture of a player who has already arrived at that conversation's doorstep. He is 22 years old. He is in the 7th game of his playoff career, and he is already being mentioned alongside Shaq, Hakeem, and Kareem in the same breath. The San Antonio Spurs, a franchise built on the quiet genius of Greg Popovich, on the fundamental brilliance of Tim Duncan, on the tradition of winning the right way, are watching a new generation of greatness bloom in their colors. The silver and black is back in the spotlight. And if Wembanyama keeps performing like this, if the Spurs close out this series and advance to the Western Conference Finals, the entire landscape of the 2026 NBA playoffs is about to fundamentally change. Game 4 is Sunday. The Target Center will be electric. The Timberwolves' season may be on the line. And somewhere in the visiting locker room in Minneapolis, Victor Wembanyama will be preparing to go to war again. Calm, focused, ready. Just like he always is. This is not a rebuild anymore. This is a dynasty being built, one historic performance at a time.